what's kind of strange and bothers me about a lot of the manufacturers is they promote these long service intervals and saying, they act like you don't need to change your oil. You can go, 6,000, 7,000. You can't, because these new engines, with the variable valve timing, dirty oil, low oil, the engines don't like it.
Yeah.
And if anything, I think on these newer vehicles, you got to change the oil a little bit more often. I don't care if it's synthetic or not.
Give us the rundown where you're from, where you work, where you live.
Okay. I'm from Colebrook, New Hampshire.
Nice.
And I live in Canaan, Vermont.
Okay.
So I'm like 15 minutes from the New Hampshire border.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm maybe 10 minutes from the Canadian border.
Okay.
So if I look out my front window here across the lake, I can see Canada.
Yeah.
So I'm like in a great spot.
Yeah. If we decide to invade, you'll see us coming.
Oh yeah, that's right. I send fireworks that way every 4th of July.
Good for you. Right on.
But no, it's a really interesting place. It's Lake Wallace, and 1/3 of the lake is in the United States and 2/3 in Canada.
Yeah.
But there's an agreement between the Canadians and the Americans that we can use the whole lake, and the Canadians can use the whole lake. So it's actually international waters.
Uh-huh.
How's
the fishing?
I get asked that a lot. I guess it's good. I don't fish, and I know people ask me, you have a boat and you don't fish? No, I don't. We booze cruise here, me and the neighbors, and but anybody who wants to go fishing, I'm more than willing to take them out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, me, I can't understand how people have a boat and don't own a fishing rod. I kind of think that when they sell a boat, they should sell a fishing rod with it, because to any other reason to be out there, it never really made sense to me. It's like, I look at guys with a pontoon boat and I'm like, okay, I've fished off of them, but it kind of sucks. Like, why would you go buy that boat? And then they're like, oh, but we had a grill and there's a table and we're playing cards and drinking. And I'm like, yeah, you're scaring all the fish away.
Well, it's kind of like an unsaid rule here. See, a lot of the Canadians, a lot of the fishermen will be out here early in the mornings, and they know us booze cruisers. We're not going to hit the lake until about 2:30.
Yeah.
So the lake is all theirs in the morning.
Yeah.
And then they're done fishing by 2, and we're out there, cruising, water skiing or whatever, Yeah. And so it works out pretty good.
Right on. So give us a rundown. Where do you work? You had a Mercedes-Benz hat on.
Yes. 2 reasons. Number one is I'm sure my service manager will watch this podcast, and he hates Euro cars. So I'm going to wear this so he has to look at it the whole podcast.
Right.
And number 2, it hides my thin hair. So
I feel that for sure.
Yeah. But I'm a Mercedes fanboy and GM mechanic, if that makes any sense.
No, I mean, I guess if you've worked on enough Cadillacs, I think you could probably go work on Mercedes and not think that it's all that difficult. Because I mean,
I found them easier to work on than GM.
Really?
Yeah, but of course I got 2 older Mercedes. Yeah, I'm sure that's not the case with the newer ones. But if you're talking Mercedes-Benz, the older you go back, the better built they are.
Yeah. I've heard more than one person say that. Yeah. And your boss doesn't like them.
As far as my service manager,
yeah.
No, he's got a really bad taste in his mouth. We've had a couple bad episodes with a couple of them, but if I could get him to listen to me, it'd be a little bit easier on him. For example, we had a Mercedes come in and the customer wanted a full tune-up. What people don't understand about Mercedes or even most Euros is even if you do something as simple as a tune-up, you're not going to go get your parts down to Napa or Advance. You have to either get them from Mercedes or BMW or somebody that specializes in European parts. because if you don't get them from someone that specializes in them, they're not going to fit.
Yeah.
And perfect example, less than a month ago, I was working on one, and the customer wanted the plugs changed, and they ordered plugs from Napa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Napa had plugs that would work with it, but the hexes on the plugs were too big to fit into the cylinder heads, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, my service manager, he's mad. Well, these pieces of crap, this is why I hate them. And I said, look, I said, you can't get parts for a Mercedes from Napa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as an aftermarket company, I get parts for my two Mercedes, and I've never had a problem.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, because all they know is at Napa, they look at, a listings. Well, yeah, we got something to fit, but it
Yeah.
won't necessarily work.
Right.
You know,
But this is your service manager at a dealer, and he's not
Yep.
understanding the fact that like he should be trying to source OE parts.
He hates these cars. He hates them with a passion.
He keeps booking them in though.
Well, not by choice,
Oh,
but
yeah.
but and so this car, I had, I tried to do plugs on it. Even the air filter did not fit.
Mm-hmm.
And then once he got, Mercedes air filter, Mercedes plug, guess what? No problem.
Yeah, car runs fine. So how does you're at a GM's dealership?
Yeah.
How do you guys do, like, is it in your area kind of known as the shop to kind of, even though it's a dealership, that you guys can fix multiple makes and multiple brands?
Yeah. Since this new owner took over, he buys everything.
Mm.
We're doing a lot of Jeeps and Chrysler now.
Okay.
But he will buy anything if he gets a deal on it. So we've actually
Right.
even sold a couple Mercedes and BMWs,
Right.
you know. So he sells everything. So we kind of have to work. We try to work on everything we sell,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so that's why, uh, I ended up working on some of the Mercedes because the owner, well, my service manager knows that I own a couple, so
Right.
he's this I know what he's thinking. He's thinking, well, if this idiot wants to own them, he's can work on them too,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. How big
uh,
a dealership is it?
it's not a big dealership.
No.
But we sell vehicles now. We sell more vehicles than anybody else around here, like a 70-mile radius.
It's good.
But 5 techs,
Mm-hmm.
2 parts guys, 1 service manager, 2 service writers. Pretty small dealership.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Kind of a mom and pop style. It's kind of the old school dealer method, right? Family owned, probably.
it was family owned by 2 families before,
Mm-hmm.
and the new owner, Don Noyes, he had a dealership a little bit further down the state, and his I think it's his brother-in-law that he's partners with, and
Okay.
decided they wanted to build a new dealership, and so we were working in the old building before they tore it down, and his business partner basically looked in the old dealership and said, "You can't put lipstick on a pig."
Yeah.
So that's when they decided to build a whole new building and a whole new dealership. And this was before COVID, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the plan was to spend I think it was, and I could be wrong on the figures. I'm just guessing, but I think they planned on spending 1.8 million on the new dealership.
Right.
And by the time they were done, I think it was closer to 3
Yeah.
million. Yeah.
It's a lot of money to outlay
Yeah.
when you think about it, eh? Like, and you and I were talking about COVID just before we started recording. Because you didn't get laid off, like everything kind of, you guys got to stay working.
Yeah.
Um, and but there was a lot of guys that weren't so lucky. I remember back right at the inception, when I was still on the Facebook group, and I can remember one dealership technician. They had been on a guarantee, and as soon as COVID hit, the dealer owner, the lady, pulled that from everybody,
Yeah.
and a lot of guys immediately quit. And he made a fuss because, like, he posted literally like the contract that they had signed, then the reneging, essentially the email that she sent out that reneged back on that, and he posted it to one of the technician groups, and it went viral. Like it was all over Reddit, it was all over LinkedIn. I can't remember the lady's name now, but she, like, it was literally, you could log in and see familiar names from this technician group going, I can't believe that you would do this to your staff. And because this is the thing, like, we talk all the time in the industry but sometimes, but a lot of the people don't really know what it is, our reality, right? Day in and day out, how what it's like to do the job, but sometimes the way some people um conduct themselves within this business and how they then treat the people. And I think that was a real eye opener for some people. Uh, when COVID happened, exactly how they showed, and it's a massive. We had a massive fallout in the industry of people leaving the industry. I know
Yeah,
lots of techs that as soon as COVID hit, they were done. They went into a different skilled trade altogether. So
yeah.
I'm glad you survived it. That's good.
Well, we didn't have it as bad as you guys did in Canada,
Hmm.
uh, but it was a shit show. I
Yeah.
don't know any way to explain it. They did lay off a couple guys, a couple of the younger guys, because they expected it to get really slow,
Hmm.
and we slowed down a little bit, but it wasn't slow before long that they had the guys. They called them right back.
Yeah.
We were busy as hell.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, um, I guess we were essential. They consider us essential,
Hmm.
and we were plenty busy. And I remember getting sick, but I didn't miss one day of work.
Hmm.
I took it as a challenge,
Yeah.
but there was a period where they wanted us to wipe everything down when we were done working on the car. And so it's like, okay, I'll do everything I can. I'd wipe down the doors, wipe down the steering wheel when we were done.
Yeah.
But the customers would bring the cars in, and they would have like 20 masks hanging around the car. They weren't doing anything to
No.
try to
No.
help us,
Yeah.
but we were supposed to wipe every steering wheel down. And
Sure.
I said, nah,
Yeah.
I'm enough with that. It's ridiculous.
It still
Yeah,
trips me up now. Like you and I were talking, we still see sometimes the people driving around by themselves in the car with the mask on,
yeah,
and like I've said my piece on that. I mean, if you want to live there in your life, that's cool. You do
yeah,
you. It. I'm not going to argue with people anymore about how crazy that is and how unhealthy it is for you. It's whatever you believe. But it makes me laugh when I still get into a car now and I reach down to grab the gear shifter and there's like three, like you said, three masks all over the gear shifter, and it's like, oh, first of all, if we could get it that way, you
yeah,
just infected me. Thank you very much.
yeah,
And second of all, it's like you're not treating it as any kind of real serious thing at this point. If you're like just handling your mask that way, right? It's just at this point, it's now a symbol, is what it
right,
is. It's just a symbol. It's
yeah,
not a medical to say it's a medical tool, that's horseshit. It's a symbol at this point of something way worse than COVID. That's all I want to say on that because I'll upset people if I go any further. But I mean, they've all heard my friends and people that have known me for a while have all heard my rants and seen my rants, and it's cost me some friends.
yeah.
We talked a little bit about right before we got on. I lost a friend to suicide very recently. I
Sorry to hear
believe
that.
it's yeah. Thank you. I believe that some of the fallout did come from COVID. We talked kind of how uh, a lot of marriages during COVID really went through some struggling times because they talked about it. Here, the one of the biggest fallouts of COVID was the fact that a lot of people that maybe uh, were in a not good relationship, unhealthy,
Yeah,
maybe abuse of some kind. All of a sudden, those people are spending way more time together.
yeah,
And wasn't always a safe place, was I saw somebody stated as. I believe that a lot of it was a breaking point in a lot of people's relationships when all of a sudden that happened because people didn't really know how to deal with it. I mean, I saw families split up because one person gets really really scared and the other person gets really really angry.
right.
And my friend, I don't know the whole story on what happened with their marriage, but during that time recently, it had ended. And I want to think that probably that was a casualty of it. I don't, I'm at the point right now where I'm still very angry because he has two young children.
Yeah,
I say young, they're teenagers, but it's at a very impressionable age, right? So
yeah, it's tough.
there's a lot of anger to handle, but I mean, this podcast has been wonderful for me. I had so many people reach out to me, and then like, it gives me something to focus on and something to talking is very therapeutic, right?
I think
So
so. Yeah, I
yeah,
think so.
yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway, enough of that negative stuff.
yeah.
So the dealership for you is going well.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, right
Uh,
on. How did you get to there? Like, what's kind of your backstory?
it's pretty simple. I grew up on a dairy farm, uh,
Nice.
and you know, uh, back when I was younger, I was into dirt bikes and snowmobiling.
Hmm.
Didn't really have the money to take them to the dealer to get fixed, so I had to
Yeah,
figure out you know how to repair them on my own.
yeah,
I remember, for example, I remember having a dirt bike. When the chain and sprockets get worn, you're supposed to replace the chain and sprockets. You don't have any more chain adjustment left.
yeah,
I didn't really have the money to replace them, so I just took the chain off, took a link out, you
yeah,
know, and it's almost like I had a new chain again. Ran the dirt bike and
yeah.
worked 7 days a week with my dad and my brother, and it taught me a good work ethic.
Hmm.
Because no matter what was going on in life, twice a day you had to milk the cows, and
Yeah.
on top of having a dairy farm, we raised and sold potatoes.
Okay.
So, if it wasn't hay season in the fall, we were,
Yep.
pulling potatoes out of the ground.
Yeah.
So it was
I've
always
I've
something
done
to
that.
do.
I've done that. It's hard work. So yeah.
Yeah. And, then after that, I worked at a couple factories before I decided to go to school. I went to a technical school in Berlin, New Hampshire.
Hmm.
And instead of taking the math and English, I just took technical classes, automotive,
Right.
and got a certificate. And I got hired right away at the dealership. Just doing back then. I don't know if you remember. This is like 1994.
Mm.
GM had a thing that they called the quick lube. We could get an
Yep.
oil change done for like $9.99, I think it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's what I got hired to do. Did that for a few months before I became their. They taught me how to do alignments and front end work,
Hmm.
which for me, I think I got into the industry at the perfect time. And the
Yeah.
reason I say that, 94, that's when they were just starting to go to OBD2.
Hmm.
And the computer systems were pretty simple back then,
Yeah.
than a lot more than they are now. And so that's just when computers were just starting to like find their way into cars. And I had a good background of doing tires because when I was going to school, I worked part time at a tire shop.
Hmm.
So I learned how to use the tire machines before I got to the dealership.
Yeah.
And then when I got to the dealership, I went from oil changes to alignment machine doing computerized alignments and front end work, specialized in that. And then as they saw I progressed on that, then I got to start doing everything. I started doing diagnosing
Right.
and electrical and everything.
Yeah.
So, but for me, I think it was a perfect time because the schooling helped. But it's funny. You get out of school and you think
Oh yeah.
you know it all.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
know a damn thing. I
Not
was
even.
so green.
Yeah.
The only way you really learn, I learned more working probably 6 months at the dealership than I did my whole 2 semesters at school.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, uh,
Yeah.
because
It's
it's hands
crazy.
on.
Yeah. It's crazy, and it's not just about like as much as you go to school, it's on the job that you learn the process, right? Like
Yeah,
how whether it's your own process or they don't, and I get it at school, maybe they don't want to teach that to you because we want people to be developing their own way of doing things, right? That's still within the reliable, safe, efficient manner, but no two people learn exactly the same, right? So but I'm the same. When I got to the dealer and all of a sudden I learned the process about like how to inspect a car, how to road test a car, what to listen for on a car, like all of that became just a routine. You walk in a direction around the car at the same time when you're putting tires on every time the same way, you know uh, the way you run your lug nuts on, the way you put your spark plugs in, all that kind of stuff, the way I keep my tool cart. I learned all that, my process at the dealer. Like, it teaches it to you. Whereas I'd worked at an independent shop and he had a process, but it changed depending on what kind of car was there, right? Whereas
Right.
when I was at the dealer, you kind of knew process could be the same, right? Because you're listening for the pattern failure, you're looking for the pattern failure, right? Your process got you there. You might as well stick with it. So,
Right. I mean, at school, I think the best thing that I learned at school was that to use an acetylene torch.
mhm.
Because being in the Northeast, that's something you
Yeah,
have to have.
yep,
You end up almost using one every day.
yep,
And I learned how to use an acetylene torch. That's probably the best skill I picked up at the school, because to me, school, we had it was more about engine construction
yeah,
and theory, and of course we had shop in the afternoon, and that was helpful. But 4 or 5 months working at a dealership just was eye opening.
hmm,
And what it was eye opening for me is I realized how much I didn't know
yeah,
and how much I needed to learn.
yeah,
You know, and I started in '94 at the dealership, and you know, and I'm sure you run into this. There were three older guys there that really didn't want to help me,
hmm,
and I still work with a coworker now who still works there. He was there a year before me. He went to the same school, and we're good friends. And he was really talented, and he helped me along the whole time. If I ran into something, always willing to help me. Three
yeah.
older guys, not so much. They wanted really nothing to do with me, you
Hmm.
know. And
I was going to ask you about that, about mentorship, because that's the one thing we sometimes see. I've seen both sides. I've seen dealerships where they're really good. Like, there's a really good mentor um, at a dealer. I ended up being a mentor for a couple people that are still good friends of mine, became excellent techs.
yep,
I kind of mentored them. I had them when they were younger. Um, but then sometimes I've seen dealers, and I've been that guy too, where it's like, the young person, stay a heck away from me. I don't want to teach you everything I know, right? I
right.
don't want to show you all the tricks that I have, because I had to sweat and bleed and sacrifice to learn,
Oh yeah,
and
I
to give it away.
I get that too, and I think you know I I didn't take it too personally because now I'm the old guy, and I
Hmm.
look back at it and you think, okay, they hired a new guy. How long is he going to last? Because
Yeah.
you've been in a situation they hire these guys. I've seen guys work one day and
Hmm.
they're gone.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, who's this guy? Okay, how long is he going to last?
Yeah.
So I get it. It's like, but I was there. I mean, I think about it now. The three older guys who were there, I've worked at the dealer longer than they did.
Hmm.
So but I do understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. Time
Because
goes so fast, right? Like, before I knew it, like at the dealer, I was my longest tenure. Before I knew it, I was there 8 years.
wow,
And I was like,
yeah,
holy smack. Like, how did it just seemed, it's funny. It just seemed like it was starting to get tolerable, right? That I
right,
could see, like, okay, maybe I can see myself, staying here, like that. I didn't always be looking for another opportunity or another job. But it was like, before you knew it, it was 6 years was gone by, and then 7 years, and then 8 years. And then, of course, management changes happen.
yeah,
Um, I left my dealer, and then shortly after I left my dealer, in 2008, nine, somewhere around there. I don't remember the exact month now. Um, they got sold, and a
yeah,
new owner came along. And now the funny thing is, that owner that bought that dealership has since sold it again, and
wow,
it's been bought by a group, which is so far, I guess, from being under the group and being bought, they immediately all got a bump in pay, quite a
yeah,
substantial pay raise, which I was telling them, because the friends that I knew that were still there, I'm like, dude, you're way underpaid. Like, you're too good, too smart, too many. You've got 17 years experience now, right?
yeah,
Had this
yeah,
one dealer on this one, you're worth way more than that. Don't settle. And the new owners came along and gave him a pretty good pay bump. and it's been good. Now, I've always said the same thing with the dealer. You can pay a tech $100 an hour. If there's no work, it's no money, right? Like there's got to
Right.
be work. So, and
Yeah,
that's
and I
where I'm.
went through that too. I actually worked at a Chevrolet dealership in Louisiana for a while, a
Okay.
totally opposite end of the country. And
Yeah.
wow, what a contrast, you know.
Uh huh.
Uh,
Less
uh,
rust.
Less rust, but you know what? They're scared to death of acetylene torches down there. Nobody has one,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So I that was a eye opening, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but uh, you know, you've been in a dealership for a while when you've gone through 3 owners and built a new building. That's, you
Yeah.
know, things have changed a lot since when I
Yeah.
first started,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So is that the only brand you've ever done a tenure with?
Chevrolet, well, when I first started it was Chevrolet Geo.
Yeah.
So I can say it
Yeah.
was Geo, but you know, of course, working with GM, you see all the brands, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Pontiac, Oldsmobile, GMC. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, being GM, they're pretty much all the same. The
Yeah.
only difference is the grill, you
Yeah.
know. But for me, the last few years, you know, I'm trying to learn Europeans, just because I own a couple, and most everybody else I work with them hates them, that wants nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
But for me, learning them, it interests me because I feel like it makes me a better technician.
Right.
Because you know, it was kind of like eye opening for me when I went to Louisiana. I was down there for a short period of time. I left the dealer, worked at a couple independents, so
Mm-hmm.
I had to work on some Jeeps, and I was out of my element.
Yeah.
You know, you work just on GM,
Yeah.
uh, it 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 throws you for a loop when you see some of these other brands. But
Yeah.
it's kind of come full circle for me now because of the new ownership. We sell so many different brands other than GM. I have the opportunity to work on other brands, and I feel like it's like night and day. You know, since I started,
Mm-hmm.
because of the different brands, it makes you better because you
Yeah.
learn more systems. You know, in theory, they all operate the same, but still, they name the parts differently. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the parts layout's a little bit different, and even the electrical, you know, where they use a Lin bus and where they use, you know, just, you know, pure power and ground is a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I I grew up in a straight Chevy family, and even until I got a job at my first dealership, I was a Chevy guy. I thought they were the greatest thing in the world. I thought they, and I thank goodness now that I never worked in a dealer, because when I think back then, that like you had Oldsmobile, Pontiac, all these different brands within the brand, right?
yeah,
That you had to get exposed to. I'm so thankful. Buick is another one, right? Like just stuff like that. And like you said, yeah, so they changed the grill, but they also had little nuances like in the electrical side of them within them too that would make them
yeah,
sometimes different. And I would
yeah,
talk to guys. I'm so glad that when I came to Chrysler,
mm,
Chrysler was just like, okay, we got the Neon, and we got the Caravan, and we got the Ram. And then we have a couple like we got an old like long car like a Concorde or an LS, Intrepid, and then that was about it. Like they didn't carry a bunch, and then Jeep, right? And that
yeah,
was it. And I was so thankful because there was a lot less to learn. I mean, there's still a lot to learn, but when I always looked at GM, I'm like, how do those guys remember all that stuff? You know what I mean? Like it's just it was impressive to me. So
right,
yeah.
y-
And then once I started driving Dodge, I realized that like uh, I just fell in love with the brand. I fell in love with Jeep. I fell in love with Rams. Caravans I loved because they made such good money. They're
yeah,
always broken. It was just
yeah,
like I just love them.
yeah.
Same as old guys like loved I remember the old Montana vans, like uh, they loved them because they were always
Montana's
broken.
Uplanders, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, like it was Venture vans. Like I can remember all of that stuff. Like you know, it was just crazy. I mean, and now to this day, my mom still drives an Equinox. So I mean,
yeah,
it's always been one in the family. So yeah,
yeah.
they're good
That's what we
products.
got. We got an
Yeah,
Equinox. We love
yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah. It's a
yeah,
great car. I mean,
yeah.
it's like. Does GM build the best engine out there? No. Does anybody really build a good engine?
Mm.
Mm, you know.
Well, you know, through my years in GM, I can tell you this: is for years I always thought that Toyota built the best engine.
Mhm.
But what I've learned through the years is a lot of the GM motors that I've worked on through the years, if they were properly maintained,
Yeah.
I put them up against any Toyota any day of the week
Mhm.
because not only if you took care of them, they'd run forever, but they had more power than the Toyota engines.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
for example, like the 4.3 V6. Okay, that engine's underpowered in a 1-ton Silverado,
Yeah.
but you put that engine in a GMC Jimmy
Yeah.
or a Chevy Blazer, you had
Yeah.
more than enough power,
Yep.
and I don't care how cold it was in the winter, that engine's going to start.
Mhm.
You know, really
Yeah.
reliable engine.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing about the 3800 that they
Yeah.
put out. You know,
Bulletproof.
yeah,
Bulletproof.
you change your oil on them and don't overheat them.
Yeah.
I'll put them against any Toyota engine any day of the week
Mhm.
because
Yep.
they're really good engines. You
Yeah.
know,
I just
uh,
find that like everybody seemed to always, and I say this, I think everybody that always had the love back then for the Asian market cars,
yeah,
Toyota and Honda. If you looked at their dealer culture, it was way better at retaining the customer and teaching the customer about maintenance. Like
right,
Chevrolet was always like, you're just buying dad Chevrolet. You can run it out of oil. You can never change the transmission fluid. Like, how many guys do you know that had like an old, you know, uh, not a Power Glide, but like a turbo 350 or turbo 400, and the thing went 200,000 miles and it never changed the fluid in the transmission. The only
yeah,
time the fluid got changed is if the line blew off. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like you never serviced them. Guys that like they go to the wrecker with the original filter in the pan, still shifting fine.
yeah,
And everybody's like, well, why, why did we get away from that? Well, we have to. But like Honda was always about, okay, this is a service interval of this, and you gotta. I never knew anybody ever service brakes until somebody that I knew drove a Honda was like, oh yeah, we get that done every year.
yeah,
I'm like, you service the brakes? What do they charge for that? Oh, like $100. I'm like, you can buy brakes for like $200. Like that's what I'm thinking back then. Like, but that was the way they approached the business was way better. So when they would say, oh yeah, Hondas are built so much better, yeah, there's some things about them that are probably bulletproof, but I mean, the other thing is they got the customer on board with the idea of like looking after this. It's an investment, not just an appliance.
right, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, you know, and I just like what's kind of strange, it bothers me about a lot of the manufacturers is they promote these long service intervals and saying, they act like you don't need to change your oil. You can go, 6, 7,000. You can't because these new engines, with the variable valve timing,
hmm
dirty oil, low oil, the
yep,
engines don't like it,
yeah,
you know? And if anything, I think on these newer vehicles, you got to change the oil a little bit more often. I don't
yep,
care if it's synthetic or not.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's being diluted with the direct injection. I think the low friction oil rings
Yep.
is contributing to a washdown effect. So yeah, the idea like I have a 2015 Wrangler with a 3.6 Pentastar. So I mean, like the service interval is like 8 or 9,000 kilometers for oil change, right? I change it at 5 because
Yep.
everything I've ever driven, I always change it at 5. And I know how they're prone for some lifter issues, some camshafts and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to go down that road if I don't have to. But
Yep.
I mean, everybody's like when they say, "Oh, you're gonna have a tick." No, man, I got 120,000 on it. It's whisper quiet. It's
Yep.
never been opened up because I run the OE spec oil is Pennzoil Platinum Ultra. 5W20. That's what I run in it, and I don't I don't go past 5,000 kilometers without changing it. I live really close to work now, so it's a short trip. So I know they say you shouldn't. It idles for probably 5 minutes before I get in and drive it down the street because I'm only 5 minutes from work. So I mean, it's like, and then I take it out on the highway every weekend and go run it around and because I don't want that oil getting all washed down and acidic and then wonder, gee, why are my lifters noisy? Like
Right.
people are been duped, like you said, with this extended interval thing,
Yep.
and it's been duped because I don't know who to blame first, whether it's the Europeans and they say, oh, like you can go 16,000 between oil changes. Somebody was talking about that on TikTok today, going, you can go 16,000. Not if you want to keep that engine for 10 years, you can't.
Right.
If you want to trade it in 3, go ahead. Like
Well, the
whatever.
Europeans got burned on that.
Yeah.
and they changed the ways. Like I remember a few years back, I had bought a Porsche Boxster,
Mm,
and
okay.
had the Boxster engine with the opposed cylinders.
Mhm. Mhm.
And people were like, there was a big thing on the internet about there's a bearing, center bearing that would go out and take out the timing chain and wipe out the engine. Well, a lot of these were garage queens, and of course, Porsche back then would tell people you didn't have to change oil for 10,000 miles.
Yeah.
Or a lot of these people own these cars. They might put, you know, they'd be lucky to put 1,000 miles in a year. Then
Mhm.
it'd be a garage queen.
Yeah.
So their thinking was, well, I only put 1,000 miles, I won't change oil this year. And finally, Porsche wisened up to that and changed it down to 5,000.
Yeah.
But the big thing I've learned about the Europeans, they kind of get a bad rap sometimes, and well deserved in some situations. But what I've learned about the European cars, whether it's Mercedes, BMW, uh, is they require more maintenance.
Mhm.
And if you don't do the maintenance, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will buy these used cars, 100, 200,000 that haven't been well maintained, and you have horror stories.
Yeah.
You know, on these engines, if they're maintained properly, as far as being reliable, I'll put them up against anything if they're
Mhm.
well maintained,
Yeah.
excluding a BMW V8.
Mhm.
The BMW made some terrible V8s. They perform like anything, but
Yeah.
very unreliable. But they made a reliable inline six.
Yeah, they did. Yep,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Ignition coil issues, right? But I mean, who doesn't have that now?
yeah.
I
Heat.
mean,
Yeah,
they had it way back 10 years ago, right? Like it wasn't, of course, yeah, it's an expensive coil. Heat, like you said, was a big factor. I can remember working on a few of them for misfire faults and that be like, here's a snap-on scanner, go look at a BMW. And I'm like, oh, because like, back then Snap-on's gotten a lot better. We put a Snap-on on a Volkswagen the other day and we were amazed at what it would do to it, right? So
right.
um, I just was back then. I have a general distaste for them just because I don't like the wiring diagram. I'm used to what I'm used to, right? So
Right.
if I look at a redrawn, it's not bad, but the redrawn oftentimes is not accurate. So then you're like, well, what am I looking at here, really? And then I'm not. It's like you said. A lot of times you get that customer that bought it used that didn't really know what they're buying, and then they kind of come with that expectation of, well, I'm a BMW driver. Yeah, but really last year you were like a Chevy truck driver. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like you went and got something completely different. Your budget's the same,
Right.
but you bought something that now requires a whole lot more. Upkeep, maintenance, everything costs more. And it tends to leave a lot of people with a real sour taste about the whole brand. And I fall in that category. I'm good with it. My boss kind of jokes and I'm like, I'm good for maybe one a month. Just if you load me up on them any more than that, I'm probably going to look for another place to work because I just don't like them.
Yeah.
So,
I, I mean, you know, for example, like when I said earlier, I found like some of the Mercedes were easy to work on the GM. I have a 2006 SLK 280. It's a
mm,
high top convertible,
nice.
and it had a misfire, and then it threw a check engine light, and it said something about emission coil number 3. It
Hmm.
actually told me which coil was bad.
Yeah, yeah,
y- You know,
yeah.
I plopped new coil in it, good to go. And it was 5-10 minute job to change a coil. You know, so they're not all that bad. You've got to understand that you've got to do the maintenance,
Hmm.
and I do all the maintenance. And
Yeah,
of course, for me, being a tech is cheaper for me than your normal person. You
right.
know, our owner allows us to work on our personal vehicles after hours at the shop. Which is a plus. And
Hmm.
not everybody can do that that buys these cars, but you see two people will buy these cars that have 150, 100, 200,000 that haven't been properly maintained, and they, like you said, they still can't afford to properly maintain them.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
uh,
What?
but
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
like with any vehicle, if you don't properly maintain it, it doesn't matter what the brand is or what the manufacturer is. You
Hmm.
know, you're gonna run into issues.
Yeah.
Uh,
Your dealer's open. we were talking just like you said, your dealer's open Saturdays.
Yes, they're open Saturday because the sales department's open till 3 in well, I think they're open till, yeah, 3 in the afternoon. They
Hmm.
want a tech on hand to
Yeah.
do, inspections if they
Yeah.
sell a car,
Yeah.
and, it was for a while, we had to work, like, every other weekend. Now for us, I think I have to work, once a month,
Hmm.
and I kinda, uh, I pulled it down. I only work until noon.
Okay.
It used to be 1 o'clock, and I have to go to the dump before they close. So
Right.
I just told them I got to be out there at noon. If you have an inspection, text me. I'll come back.
Right.
And that's the way I'll leave it, and they're
Yeah.
happy with that. You know,
Hmm.
uh, and I really at this point, at my age, I hate working Saturdays.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm getting too old. I don't even want to work that one Saturday a month
Yeah.
anymore. I don't.
Yeah.
I feel like I've put my time in. Monday through Friday's enough of the stress. I
Hmm.
need 2 days to recover now.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
I brag all the time. One of the best features of my new job is the 4-day work week. I
yep,
really think that that's such a the day is long. Like I said, we're in tire season right now, and it is a long day. Like I start at 7, I get done at 6 most nights, sometimes a little 6:30, 7 o'clock.
yeah,
So they're long days.
yeah.
But I'll trade that for 3-day weekends all summer long any day. When you go in on a Saturday, then Chris, do they have like, are you on a guarantee, or is there work kind of? Can you grab a used car and kind of putter away at it, work at it to make some hours, or do you kind of how do they work that for you on Saturday?
Okay, well, during the busy season, they'll usually have work lined up for us,
Okay.
and if they don't have enough customer work, they'll give us some used inspections to do.
Hmm.
Whatever. The last month it had slowed down, because we usually slow down just before tire season because
Yeah.
everybody down here is holds back and waits and does everything when they do the tires,
Right.
and then you get flooded, you get more work than you can handle.
Yep.
Um, so what I've done on the slow Saturdays, I'm there. Uh, if I don't have any jobs, a lot of times my brother, he knows, we're not open Saturdays, but he likes to come up on Saturdays because he's not working.
Hmm.
So my brother has like, 4 vehicles. He always has something to do. So I'll either do something for him.
Yeah.
And if they don't have anything and I need some training, I'll do some training and they'll pay me for that.
That's good.
So
That's
yeah.
good.
So I can always make enough money to make it worthwhile. Um, like last Saturday, I had to work last Saturday and I really had nothing to do after 11:30. So I left at 11:30
Yeah.
I go tell the salesman, hey, I'm leaving. If you need an inspection, just text me. And I said, after 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, I'm not
Yeah.
driving. You're gonna have to send a driver.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll come back and
So
look at it, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, you know.
How
So
are you guys getting hit with like how do I word that? Do you find a lot of is it hard to get young people to come and work for you guys?
we've been very lucky. We got 3 younger guys now working for us.
Hmm.
They've been hired, I think, within the last 2.5 years. Got one young guy that's coming along really fast, picking up really quick.
Good.
I got a couple other guys that are doing, they're doing more basic mechanical work, tires, brakes, but they have a great attitude. You
Hmm.
know, usually you see, young fellows at that age, they're kind of like cocky.
Yeah.
These 3 guys were really lucky. There's none of that in any of them, and
That's
they're
good.
willing to learn, willing to listen. We're really lucky. So we got 3 young guys that are really doing well and
Hmm.
and picking it up really quick. Uh,
Yeah.
and we even our new parts guy. Uh, he's even got a great attitude and he's picked it up quick. So, and I
Wow.
even told the owner, I said, you lucked out hiring him because he's got a great attitude. Because the parts guy we had before him, I was in war with it for years.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have a parts guy that just will go out on a limb for you and easy to work with.
That's
Because
a
years
funny
I didn't have that.
that's
You
a
know.
funny dynamic, eh? Every time I go into a dealer and I see it and I can't understand it just because it's like I, I don't know parts guys that are in middle ground. Like they either are absolute superstar rock stars they get it, right? Like they're, the more that they can serve the mechanic, and I know that's maybe not a popular thing to say, the better that they serve the mechanic, the more money everybody makes.
Right.
And then I see the other parts guys, and it's like, well, I'm underpaid. Those guys are paid way too much. They're prima donnas. They're, they all whine and complain and everything like that. I've never seen in the middle ground. You know what I mean? Like, have you
Yeah.
seen superstars or absolute, like, you wanted to reach across the counter and drag them over it and haul them out into the shop and throw them in a dumpster?
Oh yeah.
Like there was no middle ground for me. It was, I had more than one where it was like I had to leave the counter because otherwise I was coming over the counter, and I was
Yeah.
either going to get the part I needed because I needed it then, or I was going to like turn your pockets inside out because you were starting to waste my time. And and it's
Yeah.
because it's they don't appreciate, the somebody just posted, Becky posted that you can calculate out to the minute what your technician costs,
Yeah.
and it's a big number. It's a lot higher than people think. So when you're standing there and they're, I had a parts guy, the last one I really wanted, he had a fidget spinner. And I would look at that and I'm just like, you're not working fast enough if you can sit there and twirl that stupid thing as you look up a filter that you should already have memorized.
Yeah.
Or you probably know where it is, go get it off the shelf. But no, you're going to look at, and I understand it. I'm not saying that the parts don't need to be paid for and they have to be built. I get it. But like, when I worked at the last dealer I worked at, a Nissan dealer, we didn't have to go and get like an oil filter. We didn't have to go and get half our air filters. They just had a cabinet above everybody's bench, and like your oil drum was right there, and you just got the filter. It was just built out front, and it saved so much time, so much time.
Yeah.
There's little things that people can do that, and I think sometimes we look at it as like, oh, I got to track every little part. Yeah, you do. It has
Yeah.
to be caught at the front. But if you got a tech that is waiting for a little
Yeah.
stupid thing to get the job done, your process has got a hole in it right there.
Oh yeah.
Because I learned from Flat Rate for years ago that it's like I didn't want to go to the parts counter room multiple times. I wanted to go once, get all my stuff, come back. It was almost always like that's the beauty of dealership parts. You don't too many times that they don't fit. I went
Yeah.
through a thing of struts on a Hyundai yesterday, and it was the third set finally that was the right part number. And this is not an old Hyundai. This is like a 20. I mean, old is relative. It was like a 2012, right? So it's like, okay, so it's 14 years old. But I mean, there's still a lot of, 2010, 2012 Hyundais running around. They're on their third engine by now, but they're still running around. Like, that's a big part of our client base. So
Yeah.
when Napa can't even get the right part, I'm just like shaking my head. Whereas I wish I was at the dealer because it would be the right part. But yeah.
Well, in I don't have to tell you, how stressful it can get in the shop
Mm-hmm.
sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing you want to deal with is a guy that goes out of his way to make your day even harder.
Yeah.
And I had no tolerance for it. And back then, you know, I tell you what's even more frustrating is when you have a good parts guy that knows what he's doing and then goes out of his way to make you miserable.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, looking back years ago, it got so bad I got hauled in the office one day
Mm-hmm.
because I was screaming at the guy. I wanted
Yep.
to strangle him.
Yep.
Uh,
Been there.
just stupid crap that
Mm-hmm.
makes no sense, and then you get like sucked into it. That you
Yeah.
become just as immature as they are.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
uh,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah. He's playing with you. Like
right?
that's what they're doing, right? And let's be real, they got way more time to
Yeah,
think about how can I mess with this dude,
yeah,
right? How can I really screw with him? And
yeah,
I remember I had the one time I was doing a brake job on a Grand Cherokee one night, and he sent me out 2 sets of rotors for a Durango. And I didn't have the part numbers memorized, and they weren't. Listen, this is way back then. They weren't putting on OE rotors. It was so there was like it was an aftermarket box. So I took like twice, and I went back and I cursed him a blue streak at the counter. It was on a night shift to where he was like, he had his fist balled up and he's ready to take a swing at me, and I'm sitting there going, "Please do it. I would love nothing more than to like." And the next day, we both got hauled into the office and we both got sent home for the day.
Yeah.
And then after that, though, he never gave me the wrong parts again, and he was nothing but polite.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was that was the and it was literally like he had his parts manager and I had my service manager, and we sat down and it was agreed upon that was the punishment. You sent them home for the day.
Yeah.
I thought that was, in hindsight, it should have not got to where it got. And I didn't necessarily conduct myself as professionally as I should have. But at the time I was like, I've got the customer and the service advisor going, how come this isn't done yet? It's just a friggin' brake job. What are you doing? What is the take? I can't. And I said, I can't get the job done if I can't get the right effing parts.
Yeah.
And I said something along the lines of not as flattery, if we would hire somebody that, well, he of course heard that, and that's why he got offended. And I understand. But yeah, I mean, they can mess with you. I've had more problems with advisors than I've ever had with parts people.
Yeah. I guess I've had some run-ins, but I can I've got along with pretty much everybody I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
This guy here, it got beyond stupid. I mean, I got sucked into it that, I'm really embarrassed at some of the unprofessional behavior I did, but it makes for a good story.
Right.
Right. I'll give you an example of how stupid it got. Okay.
Yeah.
This guy here, like I said, he was a good parts guy. He was very knowledgeable. He was a mechanic and he went into parts because he couldn't deal with the stress of mechanics. And I understand that. And I don't fault anybody for that.
Mm-hmm.
But what would happen is, and you'd be getting along with a guy, but you go to the counter, ask for something, and you always some stupid remark, something to put you down, Yeah, like he would go as far, he would wait until you leave your bay to go to the bathroom or talk to a customer. He'd bring your parts out and make sure you didn't see him. Then when you went to the counter, he'd say, "What are you talking about? I brought him out already." Knowing that you didn't see him, And
yeah.
I'm the type of guy, I'm the nicest guy in the world. But
Mm-hmm.
if I think you're screwing with me,
Yeah.
and you screw with me, I won't get you back right away. I'll go home and think about it for a couple of days and try to think logically what's the best way I can get him back without being too obvious.
That's
It got to the point where I was doing, I had to rewire something, run a new harness or something for some truck. So I had to use different gauge wire. So, instead of like counting up how many inches of wire I used, every gauge of wire, I converted it to millimeters. So when he had to look to see how much wire I used, he had to convert it how many inches because I broke everything in millimeters,
Yeah.
And of course, I knew it was going to piss him off. So he cried to the service manager about it and see what I have to deal with, But I knew it would irk him, and for another reason, he decided that of everybody that worked there, he had his own parking space.
Yeah.
So, he would park in the same spot, and he didn't want anybody parking there.
Yeah.
Even though there was no designated parking spots.
Right.
So I don't remember what he did, but he pissed me off one day. So I got there 10 minutes early before him, parked my car there, and of course he's all pissed off.
Right.
So to get me back, he takes his truck and parks it in front of my car so I can't get out. So instead of getting mad, I call my girlfriend and say, come pick me. You're going to pick me up after work. And I had her pick me up 4 days in a row so I didn't have to move my car. So that's how stupid it got,
I would do the same thing. I'd do the same thing. Yeah. Why not? I like that spot. Hey, I'm going to leave my car. I'm having car. Listen, I'm a mechanic. I'm not that bright as you have reminded me. My car's broke down. I don't know what's wrong. It's stuck in that spot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It drove him crazy, and I knew it would drive him crazy, and it made me feel better the next day, and it relieved the stress,
Yeah.
And
it's sometimes like a dysfunctional family, right? Like we almost like the way we sometimes interact with our coworkers.
Yeah, you spend more time with them than you do your wife or your spouse.
Yeah.
And sometimes the way to break the monotony of it and break the stress is just play jokes on each other.
That does it for this episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast with Chris Rainville, part 1. Listen next week for the rest of their conversation.
Hey, if you could do me a favor real quick and like, comment on, and share this episode, I'd really appreciate it. And please, most importantly, set the podcast to automatically download every Tuesday morning. As always, I'd like to thank our amazing guests for their perspectives and expertise, and I hope that you'll please join us again next week on this journey of change. Thank you to my partners in the ASA group and to the Changing the Industry podcast. Remember what I always say, in this industry, you get what you pay for. Here's hoping everyone finds their missing 10mm, and we'll see you all again next time. I appreciate you. We'll have you on again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, man.
Yeah,
Thank
I got more stories next time.